Take your time and tell me, is it safe?
This all happened yesterday, and I'm writing this on my phone from our motel room, so please forgive any grammatical errors. Here we go. Fort Bragg, California is a small beach town northwest of Sacramento. It has kind of a Stephen King feel to it. You know what I mean, that misty, almost eerie small harbor town, but it's beautiful and a huge tourist attraction. You get people from all over the U.S. that travel here. My fiancée and I decided to drive up after I had to take some time off of work due to stress. It was a last-minute decision, and we packed our bags in less than 10 minutes, grabbed our dog, and took off. If we wouldn't have had our dog with us, I'm pretty sure I would have lost her. I guess this is where I tell the story, right? It's our second day here right now, and we are staying at a motel that overlooks the ocean. You can see the fog roll in during the early hours of the morning, and watch the fishing boats leave the harbor to go get their haul for the day. It really is a beautiful thing to see. We woke up early, and I was craving, and I mean craving, bacon and eggs. After getting dressed and deciding what spot to stuff our faces at, we left for our morning adventure. See, here's where I made my mistake. I was driving down the road, and it looked like the stop we crawled up to was a four-way stop sign. I clearly guessed wrong, because when I pulled out, I cut off a small Ford Ranger. It had a dinky little trailer attached to it, and two old men were driving, and I realized a little too late that I had cut them off. They threw up their hands and pointed at me, but Lily didn't even notice it. I just threw my hands up in a, sorry, I'm just a dipshit tourist kind of way, and they just stared me down. It was a hillbilly standoff that George Strait would have been proud of. I didn't think much of it. Kept driving down the foggy two-lane road to get breakfast. I didn't even think to say anything to my fiancée about it. I never thought I'd see those guys again, and I didn't want her to complain about me not knowing how to drive. I was wrong, and I'll never forget what happened next. We got back to the motel after a not-so-great but overly expensive breakfast. We cuddled up and talked about our plans for the wedding, and what we wanted to do after the wedding. And midway through our life plans, she realized that we were out of dog food to feed Bruce. I agreed to go up to the cute but creepy market and grabbing a bag of goodies. So I kissed my fiancée on the cheek and jumped in our Navigator. And left. I got about halfway to the store before I realized that I had forgotten my wallet on the nightstand. When I pulled back into the parking lot, I saw it. That same fucking Ford Ranger with the janky trailer attached to it. The only difference was that Hank and Boomhauer weren't inside of it. I thought to myself, I don't remember seeing them here last night. I walked up to our door while looking over my shoulder, wondering, what are the chances these douchebags are staying here? And then, not 2 seconds later, my heart started beating faster. Our motel door was open, but barely cracked. It was open slightly to the point where you could see a sliver of light, but nothing more. I slowly pushed it open and looked inside, but I didn't see anything. Lily and Bruce were both gone. It was like they were never really there at all. My heart started racing, and I dropped my keys on the floor and ran outside, heart pounding in my chest faster than a jackhammer. I didn't see the creepy old guys from the Ford truck or my fiancée outside. I was becoming angry and frantic by this point. Fuck, where are you guys? I thought, before the screaming inside my head was cut off by the sound of familiar barking. I heard Bruce barking and I ran faster than I ever have in my entire 28 years of life. I ran straight over to the front office where the sound was coming from, and that's when I saw her and our dog inside the office. My fiancée was crying, sitting on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, and the dog's hair was standing straight up until he saw that it was me sprinting towards them. Lily got up and ran into my arms. Meanwhile, the clerk was on the phone, and I'm wondering, what the fuck happened in the 2 minutes I was gone? And this is what happened told by my fiancée, and it makes my blood run cold. It turns out as soon as I left, not 30 seconds went by, and those fucking guys knocked on the door. Lily opened it, thinking it was me forgetting something, and they tried to force their way into the room, and one of them said, "You can thank your boy toy for what's coming to you." Then they grabbed her and covered her mouth, but those assholes didn't realize one thing, and that was that we had a dog in the back seat when I cut them off. Bruce jumped off the bed and didn't hesitate to bite the one grabbing her, and they kicked him and tried to shake him off, but he wouldn't let go. After being bit and realizing that the noise would draw attention if they didn't leave, they ran off, and Lily was able to run to the front office and wait for help, and Bruce followed suit. I wasn't there. I couldn't protect her, and if we would have found a dog sitter, Lily would be gone right now. But my dog was there, and he did exactly what a good boy, no, the best boy would do. And for that, he is truly my best friend. If he wasn't there, what would have happened? Would she have been kidnapped, beaten, killed, all of the above? The craziest thing is that they haven't been caught yet. We filed all the reports with the local sheriff, and I told them what had happened earlier that morning, and the cop looked right at me and said, "You're lucky your dog was there. If he wasn't, and they got in with her, you could have been filling out a very different report right now." I got tears in my eyes at that, and I looked over at Lily and Bruce and thanked God that I rescued him from the pound, because in return, he rescued the love of my life when I couldn't. So, dudes from the hills have eyes and deliverance? Let's meet. But this time, I'm going to be the one grabbing you, and trust me, I'm not going to let you get away this time. Bruce is getting a steak dinner tomorrow night, and all the treats he could ever want. My daughter was about 10 months old when her dad moved in with us. We had decided to give it another try, and I had my reservations at first. The last 4 months of my pregnancy and the first 9 months of my daughter's life, he had been absent. Even though I had gone through a lot of hardship on my own, I was young and in love, so I figured why not. At first, it was not easy for either one of us, and we still fought over every little thing. But we were both trying, and we would eventually talk about how each of us had reacted and what we could do to stop fighting. A couple of weeks after he moved in, I woke up in the middle of the night and realized he wasn't in bed. I stayed awake for a few minutes and he hadn't come back, and I also didn't see that the restroom light was on. I got up, went out to the hallway living room area, and saw that he was standing with the drapes slightly open, peeking out the window. When I called out to him, he turned and had his fingers to his lips, signaling for me to be quiet. I got scared and stood frozen in place. He walked back to me and nudged me back into the bedroom. I asked him what was going on, and he said that there was someone out there trying to get in. He said, "She wants to take that baby." I panicked and told him we needed to call the police, but he insisted that no, she's gone already. I kept asking who it was. How did he know she wanted to take the baby? Why don't you want to call the police? I relaxed a little when he said, "I just know." Then I figured he had a bad dream or was sleepwalking, so I told him to lie down and go back to sleep. A couple of nights later, the same thing. I would ask him about it in the morning the next day, and he would remember everything, and he would say that he couldn't sleep, that he had a feeling someone wanted to take the baby. I chalked it up to him having anxiety over being a new dad, and I even thought he was on something, but he was a health freak and had never even tasted beer. He had been staying with us now for maybe 6 weeks when we were awoken by my daughter screaming at the top of her lungs. This was unusual. My daughter slept through the night, and this was not crying, this was screaming. So we bolted out of bed and ran to her bedroom, only to find that the door wouldn't open. Her dad was trying to force the door open while I wrung my hands in full panic mode. And finally her dad ran to the kitchen to get a knife to try to open the door while I stood there talking to my baby to get her to calm down. When her dad came back, before even trying the knife, he turned the knob and guess what? The door opened. And we were freaking out. We had never even closed the door to her bedroom at night, much less lock it. After that incident, we always made sure we blocked the door with a trash can so it wouldn't close. And this was also the beginning of her night terrors. She did not like being in the apartment, and she would constantly jump at every noise and would follow me even to the restroom. She stopped sleeping in her bedroom, and she would cry bloody murder if we tried putting her down to sleep in there. She was sleeping in our room now, and a few times while getting ready for bed, the bedroom door would slam, and there were no open windows, no AC or even a fan. Picture frames would fall from the wall, and perfume bottles were constantly knocked over. Once, in the kitchen, while she was sitting in her baby chair, a fork came flying out of nowhere and barely missed hitting her. Sometimes she would be staring at something and would look frightened, and then she would turn her back against the wall, shut her eyes, and start crying. The weird thing is that she wasn't like that when she was at my parents' house. There, she was a happy baby. Her pediatrician said they were probably night terrors and didn't offer any quick solution. My mother took her to see a Mexican brujo, or witch. My mom told me that he practically just massaged her head and burned some plants or weeds while he did some praying. He told my mom that something very evil was trying to attach to our daughter, and he advised that we get her out of there. My daughter was now staying with my parents, and her dad and I would spend most of our nights there too, just so we could be with her. And frankly, we were scared of the apartment. Well, we had a lease and couldn't get out of it, so we kept paying rent, but we were rarely there. One day, I was at a park with my daughter and brought her a big helium balloon, one that had arms and legs out of paper that would swing around. On my way back to my parents', I stopped by the apartment to get something, and I didn't want to leave her alone in the car, so we both went in. I left her in the living room holding her balloon and told her I would be right out. I was getting some stuff into a duffel bag when I heard her start screaming and crying. I ran out and saw that the balloon, instead of being stuck to the ceiling like it should have been when not being held by the string, was chasing her around the coffee table. I picked her up and was kicking the balloon that kept sticking to my legs, and the stupid thing just kept coming back. Meanwhile, my baby was hysterical and clinging to me for dear life, so I grabbed my keys and purse and ran out of there with her. As I was locking the door from the outside with my keys, I very clearly heard laughter coming from inside. I arrived at my parents' house still shaking and crying, and my dad kept explaining something about static and why the balloon was sticking to us. I get it, but nothing explains the laughter, or the fact that the balloon was full of helium and should not have been gliding a few feet from the ground. It should have been on the ceiling. That was the last day either one of us stepped foot in that apartment. My soon-to-be husband at that time, his sister, and his brother-in-law packed up all of our stuff and moved everything out. My daughter is all grown up now, and even though she remembers many things from her childhood, she does not remember that apartment. She has had nightmares that she tells me about and describes the layout of the apartment, though. Maybe it was a spirit that did not appreciate her dad moving in with us, but why torment my baby and not him? Just reliving all this makes my heart race, and I'm actually shaking right now as I type. I've had many incidents involving spirits in my parents' house in Mexico, but none have really scared me like this. I live in California now, but spend the weekends in the house in Mexico. My mom moved out of the house and now lives in Nevada, so we have a close friend of the family living there with her children. They have told me of some unusual activity going on right now, and I'm getting ready to do a house cleansing. I'll let you all know how that turns out.